Hi guys, my name is Borrodante, and welcome back to Overpain. And today's patient is Tom Girka. I used Google Translate to make sure I don't pronounce it wrong. It's probably still wrong. He looks fascinating, by the way. But more importantly, is his artwork. Check this out. This is like Alien Jesus or something. Maybe not, but I'm gonna call it that way. There's something romantic about this concept. Like an absurd child of science and religion. Just watched your voodoo doll challenge with GD Quest and you point out one of my big problems. I get so into details that I forget the overall composition. Or I get tired after weeks working on the same thing. You really hit several of my weak spots. They're my weak spots. So, I did this piece that I call Gloria. I wanted it to have a classic oil painty feel. I got excited about sheep until I got tired of rendering sheep. I got excited about trees until I got tired of rendering trees. I didn't have a plan for the landscape, so in the end, it was just about how I could call this thing done and move on. Story of my life. Not sure it's worth an overpain, but there's something that just isn't working. Well, yeah, there's a few things that we can think about. This is really interesting, this is quite a high level of skill, but at the same time, it's a little bit, wasted in a wrong place. Again, very familiar situation. So Tom posted this on my Patreon page quite a long time ago, March 5th. Not that long time ago, but I guess that was before I made that tutorial on detailing and blending. And I think in that tutorial there's a main thing described that is really missing here. Or one of the two things. So what I'm trying to say is that there is a lack of quality consistency. Meaning the sheep has this blurry kind of level of details on their fur, and same thing goes for certain bumps on the anatomy on the alien, but at the same time some other things become super sharp and they stick out of the painting like they're just on top of it. And the best example is, I guess, the grass and these very scary textures of old paint. Tom mentioned he wanted to give it an old painterly look, but it kinda looks like it just blends away into an old painterly fence that has its paint falling off. So that's one thing about the quality control. And the other thing is about this whole trapping yourself in details and missing the big picture in these details. I've had this issue for a long time, and after a while I found an answer to it is that I don't detail hard enough. Whenever you go into details and you just start adding these super precise, sharp details on one part of the painting without considering what it looks like overall, that means you're not thinking hard enough. You have to think about what it looks like from the point of view of the whole picture. And also there's certain lack of three-dimensional feeling to the lighting. That's also due to the fact that you go too much into details in a way that, if you would think from the point of view of the big picture, this lag should probably not catch all this bright light all that much. And also the value control, the lag is almost as bright as the head, which doesn't make much sense since the head's surface is facing upwards and the lag is almost completely sideways. It just should be darker in general. And also in here, this is very interesting moment. So familiar, I don't even know exactly how I would do it differently before I just go ahead and do it. But the thing is, there's too high of a contrast in the lighting of details. It makes no sense for it to be such a high contrast. I mean, look at the arm. There's a reflex on it. There's barely any actually dark area on the arm. But the torso is almost completely black everywhere. So there shouldn't be such a dark shadow area on the torso in general. But again, to make sure that we work with a proper contrast, we add really dark shadows in the areas that have some kind of wrinkles or dents on the body that have completely no light coming in. So in some of the wrinkles, maybe a little bit of really dark shadow there will be, but mostly we have to fill in the body with much lighter color. I'll think on everything in a moment. Right now I just wanna maybe say something more. It's not super easy for me to think on this painting. I'm almost like having a deja vu. Really close to the way I used to paint a few years ago. It's so cool. So yeah, another thing I want to talk about is the environment, the background. Like, I'm looking at the painting, I really can't tell what time of the day it is. It looks rather dark, but the lighting on the clouds is on the top, but it's like really dark. So the main reason for that is, I guess, just because the alien should look brighter than everything else. That's why the day is darker. Well, I would choose to make it like a dawn with bright colors next to horizon, and then gradually getting darker when we're getting closer to the wings that should have some awesome translucency going on. And that way we'll have really cool representation of the shape of the character. Because right now, wings obviously blend into the bright clouds in the background here and there, and it's kind of hard to read the shape of the character, which is always such a dilemma. This is the kind of stuff that you have to like think through beforehand to make sure that if there should be a bright character in here, then there should somehow be a dark background here, so it would look more epic. So I'll probably try to do that first. And also about the ground. The idea is obviously like here, and this has no idea at all. Like, there's no message in there, which is something that shouldn't take place in a painting at all. So what we have to do is we have to find a way to make it look interesting in each part of a painting. This grass shouldn't look so uniform and boring. It should bring a certain message. Message of perspective, message of light, message of the shape of the thing, and everything should support this alien and the sheep. So yeah, the hills, I kinda like them. They kinda look cool. Still kinda like Windows XP background, but I like it. It looks nice. The only thing is that there's a very boring lack of contrast between the ground and the sky, but that's the thing where I really want to add this dawn kind of gradient closer to the horizon on the sky. It's gonna look pretty cool. So I guess let's just start, and then maybe I'll come up with something more to say, but I'll try to make sure to ruin all of the details. So yeah, let's play around with everything on this. Okay, so I jumped all over the place a little bit, thinking with big spots just to make sure it just works as a whole. Not super happy with it so far, I guess because of the sky. I changed that a lot and I should add something else, something more to it, because right now the atmosphere kinda went off the rails a bit. I should probably add more clouds as there was in the original. Added some, I feel like, more appropriate geometry to the light spot on the grass. Right now it was kind of not in the plane of the ground enough. So I placed it a bit more like it's on the ground. So it should be wider and going further away as a gradient, horizontally and not so much vertically. Kind of feels a bit more three-dimensional that way. So yeah, the point is I'm working with a big brush, and it's the same brush for everything, which is important, meaning initially, like, the grass was painted with a brush for a grass, which, like, in my opinion, and especially for something that it should look painterly, that's a bad strategy to do that. You mostly should use just one brush, or maybe two brushes, but they should have just a bit of a different shapes, but generally be just, like, not of a shape of something specific that you want to paint. For instance, the potato brush I use most of the time to paint all kinds of objects and drop spots initially, and then paint deeper into the details for most of the objects that have somewhat of an obvious surfaces. But for foliage, for the grass, I will probably be using Canada Claw version, because this one creates this kind of mess that allows me to show a very detailed mass of foliage with just few strokes, sometimes with just one stroke. But it shouldn't be aimed to look like one of the leaves, one of the grass strains. You shouldn't try to do that. Like, your strokes shouldn't get smaller just because the grass is really thin. You shouldn't paint every single grass string ever. And right now I'm looking at this tree, it stands out in a bad way. For the tree leaves, there was a special brush that kinda looks like every leaf is visualized. It's a lot more sharp than everything else in the painting. It stands out as a different kind of quality. It shouldn't take place on a painting like that. So basically, I would recommend just going from a point where you just use one brush for everything. And from that, carefully try to find brushes that would make your work easier, but not because you would be able to show every single little detail in a mass of details, but just because it would help you to show a mass of details without showing every single of the detail. Again, detailing and blending tutorial is about that. To be able to show smaller amount of details and higher amount of details with the same amount of strokes per inch. It shouldn't change. The scale of strokes shouldn't really change everywhere. Okay, I'll keep searching the sky composition and whatnot, and then zoom in a bit on the alien and work a bit more, and maybe on the sheeps as well. So let's do more work. Okay, so I've been doing everything that I've been talking about for a while now. Kinda working out, I guess. I'll try to add some god rays coming from the alien somehow. Probably best to use a second layer for that. So now, as you can see, I'm using the rough spots that I had. I obviously don't have enough time to make it look actually cool in detail, but I just go ahead and look up for moments where maybe several bits of grass, several strings of grass would create a cluster together or something, so it would make a brighter spot that would stick out of everything else, while being thicker than just one piece of grass. And I'm looking for those, and I'm just adding this kind of bright spot. Kinda like what a person with a bad eyesight would see. But I'm not using any smaller strokes, like not the actual thickness of any grass ever. Just showing several bits of grass catching more light than usual with an opaque stroke. If there's probably smaller amount of grass, then I just make the same scale of a stroke, but not as bright. And just thinking about the composition of the strokes to make it look interesting. Okay, let's see. I'll work a little bit on the alien and maybe on the sheep. Basically, I like the sheep, but the only problem that I have with them is the differences of the quality. Like, the fur is so smooth, it was painted with a very soft brush, while the rest of the painting is a lot sharper, and some of the edges are sharp and extremely well defined, which feels a bit off. Also, why would this surface catch so much light? I like that black one. Wait, is there a message in that? Is this Judas? Really can't stand these super sharp grass bits everywhere. In this case, you really have to go with maintaining one style of brushwork. That's an important word. Brushwork. And using textures for grass and whatnot, it works well in a stylization when, if you're a concept artist and you quickly bash different textures one on top of the other, and you make a composition out of interestingly cut and changing layers of texture and whatnot. It takes a lot of work, but a very different kind of work. And you can't just make an actual old school kind of painting next to it on the same canvas. it doesn't fit together. So that's the main kind of message this video has, I guess. So yeah, I don't know, I fixed the sheep a little bit, but not enough, of course. Generally, I would just, go over all of the fur just to make it look not as smooth, but actually have the brushwork on it. And in here, I don't know, I'll try to add some more brightness on the torso, although I kind of passively did that already. Also, a little bit of a reflected light from the bright whatever in here, the bright cloth, would probably give a pretty strong reflex right here. It's so weird, I kind of looked into his eyes now, and it's kind of unsettling. Alien god. So I'm only keeping the dark shadows where they're really called for, where the surfaces get together, usually an armpit or where the cloth is really close to the body. And in the context of these dark shadows taking place, the rest of the body being not so dark, as we talked about it in some of the previous overpaints, it brings the context of a realistic ambient light or reflected light. So many highlights. Usually that doesn't happen. So many highlights everywhere. Kind of breaks the feeling of realistic material if there's too much of the highlights. Better concentrate on proper values. That's what really looks realistic if done right. So the light is hitting kind of like towards us, towards the camera, symmetrically, but the torso is rotated away. That means that the shadow from the head wouldn't go symmetrically on the chest. It would kind of go this way. So I'll add some of the light on this boob. Okay, seems a bit better, I think. Yeah, some of the local fixes on the values on the light makes things feel a bit more like we're actually there, like the alien is actually there. It's really important to consider how the angle of the surface comparing to where the light is, how it changes its brightness. The more you face away, the darker it gets, and you really have to pay attention to it. That's like one of the main things you have to always think about. And after that, if something feels weird, it's probably because there's something really bright next to something dark, so it will add a reflected spot in there. And you add that and it looks just mwah. So yeah, something like this. I would love to detail more and find more little bits to fix. Not sure about my new sky. Maybe I didn't choose the best color for it, like a violet. Don't really have the time to fix it now, but as a version, I guess it's not that bad. My version looks scary, like it's an alien that, came from space right there. Kinda messed up the rays. I don't think I have a good brush for that yet. I should really import all of my Photoshop brushes into PaintStorm, because painting optical effects with actual brushwork, that's one thing that I still don't know if it's possible to do that. Because I can't really imagine how would Rembrandt paint Michael Bay's visual effects. It's not a thing, we need to use something different for that, I guess. But still, it's always a battle of tastes. You have to come up with what looks right. So yeah, I guess this is it. I think the best part that I did is the grass. Although Alien is kind of cool as well. Well, he is cool. He's kind of epic, really. Just needs some thought on the brushwork and a little bit more attention to the values. And detail with the spots. Don't detail objects, don't detail separate details, like separate little bits of grass or leaves or anything, but detail into light clusters. Work with the light, it's all the same thing. That's why it's always the same brush. You just paint not the grass, but the photo effect of a reflected light from this grass. that's where it starts to make sense to make everything look in one art style. Yeah, I guess that's the thing. So this is it. Tell me guys what you think, especially about the sky. I'm still very concerned. Thank you, Tom, for your interesting submission. And I thank you for watching if you did. I guess you did if you're here. Leave a like and subscribe. Tell a friend. Obey. Do whatever you want. And I will see you in the next one. Bye. Obey.